I feel like with us, you you always liked baseball. You were a Cubs fan, a Brewers fan. And I think that when you were hitting some of the hardest times in your career that were challenging, and it was challenging for us as a family, I took a suggestion from my aunt. She's a pastor's wife. I called her and I said, Auntie Cheryl, I need you. I need you to give me some suggestions. How do I have conversation with my husband when he is so shut down? And one of the things that she had said to me is, who is he? What does he love? Well, he loves baseball. She goes, well, are you watching the games when he can't watch them? He works third shift. Are you watching the games? I said, well, no. She goes, well, watch the games. So when he gets up in the in the afternoon, you can say, hey, I watched the Cubs game and this is what happened. And, and she said it'll open him up to, oh, you did? Let's start the day off positive, with the Cubs game talk or whatever. And I'm goofy. So, so I do the play by play, and I would always make up a little game that if the runner got to first base, you had to give me a kiss on the cheek or whatever, just silly little things. Right.
Yeah.
And I would keep score and I would keep track of, and you'd always say, you're so goofy, but you know what? It brought a smile to your face. And I think that sometimes we forget about how we used to be dating. And we used to do whatever it took to make each other laugh or to be happy, or to smile, right? And I think we forget that as husbands and wives sometimes, that you fell in love with that person for a reason. And that reason is still there. That reason is still in there. It's still inside that heart. It didn't leave. It may have gotten a little jaded, a little guarded, but it's still there. And I think that I would bring that out a little bit, that's just one example, right? Or fishing, you love to fish. And so as a family, we'd go out and we'd fish. And, sometimes the kids didn't want to, and they'd be playing in the rocks or they'd be doing this. And sometimes your frustration would come out and, well, I don't even know why we're fishing because the kids don't even want to fish. But I would always remind you, they're kids and they're here with you, and I think sometimes your officer just needs a little reminder. It's okay. It's okay that they're doing this but you're still fishing. You're still doing what you need to do to get that stress relief. And I think the other important thing is that we've always done things together. We coached basketball together. We fished together. I did the ride-alongs with you. You got to find that commonality. And it's not fair to just blame it on the officer because as a spouse, you're responsible too. You're responsible as a spouse to open up. You're becoming guarded and again, you need to be a little bit more forgiving. And of course, it's not taking abuse or whatever else. That's not what I'm talking about. But if they're shutting down, don't go after them because then that's going to just guard them right back up again. You need to, like I said, find a common thing to talk about. What are the silly things that you did when you were dating? Do those silly things. And if it's chasing, I used to tell you, because you'd come home and talk about some chick that, wrestled and this and that. And she was just scrappy. And, it took 2 or 3 of you to hold her down. And she was 100 pounds soaking wet. I'd always tell you, I'd get away from you. And so I'd always challenge you to try to get me under control.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we'd laugh until we're both sitting there, with our stomachs hurting because we would laugh so hard,
Yeah. But for you too, it's a turn on. So
shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm just saying, you got to be lighthearted. You've got to be silly. You've got to remember that your officer once was a silly person and bring it back. And as an officer, you married that person because you trusted them and you loved them, right? You trusted them enough to become their husband or their wife. Why don't you trust them now? Because you don't trust the people on the street? You didn't marry them. You didn't ask them to marry you. You didn't stand before God and your family and say, I do forever. but you did with your spouse.
Very interesting. That I think that's a good way to end it.